Hi, here's the final instalment of the Marshall Plexi Super Lead, the hand-wired reissue, and I'm going to use this video to show you how I've biased it, take you through the biasing procedure. There's no bias test points on this amp. There's the bias adjustment. You can see the pot there. So I'm using the transformer shunt method. Now care should be taken when doing this. There's over 500 volts on these two connections. So let me take you through it. It's switched on and brought out of standby, so it's operating. I've drawn a little simplified schematic of the output stage. This is one pair of EL34s. I've called these the V1 and V2. That's the other pair, V3 and V4. That's the output transformer primary, and that's the center tap where the 500 volts DC comes into that center tap. The top of the winding feeds these two valves. The bottom of the winding feeds those two valves. Quite straightforward. So to measure the bias using the transformer shunt method, we clip a meter onto the center tap and then we measure first to the top to the end of this winding. And we did measure 1.35 volts. This will vary depending on the state of the valves. So I measured 1.35, and on the bottom I also measured 1.35. In fact, it's 1.33 today. The mains fluctuates. I measured this yesterday, it was 1.35. But we'll call it 1.35. So after we've done that, we have to measure the DC resistance between the center tap and each end. So that's between the center point and this side for these two, and between the center point and this point for those two. Now when we're doing that, we have to have the amp switched off and it has to be thoroughly discharged, or you could damage your meter, or you could damage yourself. But anyway, it must be discharged. And on this particular transformer I measured 21.3 ohms that side, and I measured 20 ohms that side. It's very rare to get them both measuring the same value. There's always a few ohms difference. That's normal. So using Ohm's law, it's dead easy to work out the bias, the standing current. So all you do is divide the volts by the resistance, 1.35 divided by 21.3, and that gives you 0.063 of an amp. The answer's in amps. But 0.063 of an amp is 63 milliamps. Now for the bottom pair of valves, it's the 1.35 divided by the 20 ohms. That gives you 0.067 of an amp, which is 67 milliamps. But these values of course are for two tubes, so divide that by 2 for each tube and you've got sort of 31.5 milliamps and 33.5-ish. So that's all straightforward, and these are good measurements actually, because with 500 volts this is good. It's about what you'd expect. There's no point in running them any higher. You'll not get any increased output. You'll just shorten the valve life. But of course, if you draw in too little current, then you're heading into crossover distortion. I've already tested it on an oscilloscope, and we're getting over 100 watts with no crossover distortion. So that completes the servicing. Everything's running great. Done all the other work as we explained in the second video. So I hope that's of interest, and thanks very much for watching.